Hi, I'm Dr. Chris Croley, Chief Medical Officer at Empire Medical Training. I'm going to talk to you about dosing philosophy and really specifically about complication management. How do we manage complications? And if we have to manage neurotoxin complications, what is the doses we should use and what muscles should we treat? I think we all struggle with that. It really comes down to a core understanding of anatomy. And if you have a weak understanding of anatomy, it's going to be really difficult for you to come up with complication management strategies. So I do encourage you, regardless of what we can cover in this short, brief segment today, to really dig into your understanding of anatomy, find you some courses, join us at one of our in-person cadaver anatomy courses, but you really need to understand anatomy to understand dosing philosophy and complication management. Now, the case that we're going to discuss today is a published case. It's a 44-year-old woman with neurotoxin-induced facial asymmetry. So the lesson is not we're giving this or treating this patient. We're going to show you some pictures, and it's not that we're treating with 14 units. It's how we place the 14 units, why we chose 14 units, what muscles did we treat. And so when we look at this and we think about the units, we always get confused. So remember, dose equals duration. So the higher number of units that I give, the longer the duration of effect. Usually when we have a complication, it's not because I directly injected the wrong muscle. Most of us inject the correct muscles, but often they're very close to other muscles that we may not want to inject. And so occasionally, some of the dose that we give leaks over, diffuses over, affects that muscle that we didn't want to treat. Because we didn't treat that muscle directly with the highest dose, almost always those asymmetries, those complications last a shorter amount of time than the toxin I put in my intended muscle that will last the whole duration. Now, there's no way we know that. We don't have magic glasses. We don't know exactly how much toxin affected that muscle. So it's impossible for me to tell the patient this will only be 2 weeks or only be 6 weeks. So when we're managing complications, it's important to understand that we usually start with lower doses than we would typically treat those muscles with. Otherwise, we're going to end up with the other type of asymmetry. So if we start with one side elevated or hyperactive, and now we go and fully treat those muscles that are hyperactive with a full dose, that's going to last a longer duration than the side that we inadvertently treated with a lower dose. So we're constantly having to say, chase that hyperactive muscle or the overactive muscle, creating the asymmetry. So I want you guys to put that in the back of your mind as you start coming up with doses and plans. First thing we're going to do is look at the muscle strength. And so as we start to assess what's causing the asymmetry, we need to assess the muscle. We need to assess the muscle strength. And then we need to make an assessment of what is a reasonable number of units that we would put in that muscle. And this is usually based on extrapolations from muscles of other similar size. So with a lot of our neurotoxins, we're treating in an off-label manner. And so there's no standardized dose for that muscle that's an FDA-approved label indication. But we can extrapolate. We can say, what is our normal dose in a master? What is our normal dose in the glabellar complex or the frontalis? And then we can make an assessment. Is this muscle a similar size? Is it a bigger muscle? Is the activity more? And I'm going to adjust my dose up or down. We're going to look at the anatomy of the area that's moving and not just the movement, but the size of the muscle. If this is a young guy with a really thick, dense muscle, we're probably going to have to use a higher number of units or a higher dose. We're going to look at the pattern of movement. And so when we're treating complications, keep in mind with neurotoxin specifically, we can only treat the muscle that's moving. Anywhere that's not moving, even if it's the side that the patient likes, we can't really do anything different with that side. We can only treat the dynamic movement or the muscles that are moving with our neurotoxin. We're going to look at the asymmetry and we're going to have a realistic conversation with the patient that by treating this asymmetry, we are usually treating muscles that we would not normally treat. And so oftentimes, I think where you'll most often see this is in the frontalis or the forehead. Patients have one side that's higher than the other, that's moving more than the other, and they want that treated. But in general, they like the higher side. And all we can do is lower the higher side. There's no way that we can elevate the side that we've caused heaviness on. And so that's the most common area that we'll see this. But as we get into lower face, it's understanding those dynamic movements, those muscles, and how they're interacting with muscles around them as we devise a treatment plan. We need to talk to the patient about their goal. So are we trying to totally correct this? Are we trying to make this perfectly symmetrical? Are we trying to minimize the appearance of the asymmetry? So let's think about a case of an inadvertent depressor labii inferioris injection. One side of the lip may not move when they smile, but if we treat the other DLI, their lower lip may not move at all. And so they have to understand that, yes, we can make your smile symmetric, but it may not look natural until we let this wear off. And so kind of coaching them through what's coming up. Are you scheduled for a big photo shoot and we really need that symmetry more than you need movement? Or if this is something that you don't have any major events coming up, maybe it's a let's watch and let's let this wear off without continuing to chase that movement. And then have they had any prior similar complications? How was it treated? What was their response? So as always, I want to remind you, as we're doing these treatments, we start with the FDA on-label indications. As we start treating other muscles all over the face and body, we actually start extrapolating that information, extrapolating those doses. And when we do that, we may have an unexpected response because this has not been studied in large groups of patients. Now, the patient didn't necessarily need more toxin in this case. She needed better balance. And so this is a report, it's in open access, and you can see this. We kind of reconstructed some of this, but with the right side relatively flat and the left side relatively overactive. This was 3 weeks after prior cosmetic toxin. So keep in mind, this is not 3 days later. So we know that neurotoxin can continue to set in and continue to impact muscles for up to 2 weeks after administration. So we usually don't do any corrective action within those first 2 weeks. At rest, sometimes it's difficult for us to see this without a close examination. If we look at this at rest, the right face appears slightly flatter. The left oral commissure is slightly higher, but those are subtle changes. This is not something that the patient may even notice. So your clinical decision then has to be based on their dynamic movements or their movement with activity. So when we start coming up with plans, this is where we get into reviewing the anatomy. And let's talk about areas that are commonly treated. So we have frontalis, glabellar complex up here that we commonly treat. We treat the lateral orbicularis oculi for crow's feet. But as we start moving down into this area and treating kind of the lower portion of the crow's feet that sometimes we'll start see on these lateral cheek lines, and we start chasing those lines, guess what? We get close to two muscles. And especially if we go deep in that area, or if the patient is really thin, we can impact the zygomaticus major or minor. Those muscles are actually elevators, and they will elevate our smile on one side. So if we stop that muscle movement, this upper lip will not move. So when patients come back and they say, I only got my crow's feet treated, but my smile has changed, question your injection technique. Review your understanding of the anatomy in that area and what lines you are actually trying to treat. Okay. Some other muscles that we can kind of sometimes get into trouble with are going to be our depressor anguli oris. And so I kind of demonstrated this in some earlier videos. This is our DAO here. And then we also have our depressor labii inferioris, which is kind of on this side here. And notice these muscles overlap. This is superficial. And right under that is going to be our depressor labii inferioris. And then we have our mentalis. And so those muscles are fairly close together. And by treating them, moving our syringe just millimeters, injecting with a little bit too much force, we can drastically alter the smile. So we can go from, if we're treating intentionally our DAO, we're treating it to elevate the corners of the mouth. But if we treat the DLI, all of a sudden we paralyze the lower lip. So we go from trying to create an upturned smile to having the patient look like they had a stroke. And so problematic to say the least. When we look at the mentalis, this is the chin muscle here, creates a dimpled chin. A lot of patients like that. I want to remind you that many times we see a dimpled chin for volume loss, not because of muscle overactivity. And so sometimes treating this with volume is the key, not neurotoxin. And so we have to look at that anatomy and understand it. This is a picture of this patient with animation. You notice that the left side is going up, the right side is relatively flat. After correction with movement, you see basically improved commissure position and symmetry. And so basically we have to look at what areas we can treat and how are we going to do it. So we observe the patient at rest and with animation. We diagnose the problem. So we look at the muscles that were impacted. We prioritize which ones matter the most, start conservatively using low doses of our neurotoxin, place it according to the muscle size, strength, the role, and the risk, and then reassess the patient in 2 weeks. Now let's go back to our treatment chart here. So when we look at this and we look at the muscles that we treated, basically we intentionally lowered the smile on the side that was overactive, right? So we intentionally treated that zygomaticus minor muscle because that's what looked like it affected. One side was not moving. Many patients will not like that. They want to have that elevated smile, but if we want to make her symmetric, we can't change the side that's not moving. We have to impact the side that is moving too much. We treated, or I didn't treat, in the case report, they treated the depressor anguli oris. So a low dose in that side to try to elevate the smile on that one side, actually over there, sorry. And then the mentalis fractionated across the muscle enough to address that chin imbalance. So notice that drastic difference in results that we see there, but even with animation, she has a relatively flat appearance. And so because of that, many patients do not want those smile elevators treated. They want to have that nice smiling face. So as you do these procedures, they are complex. You need a thorough understanding of anatomy and a thorough understanding of your neurotoxin and how to dose it appropriately. I want you to always be conservative. You can always add more. It's hard to take this away. And more often than not, the side that was inadvertently treated will wear off in a shorter period of time than the expected duration of your entire neurotoxin. Thank you.